elected official is asked to sign for the city of Oakridge.
Can I interrupt a second?
No, just a minute, hold, just a second, let me finish.
Hold that thought.
And hold that thought, and then, yes, you can. We also have laid out in our charter, some basic rules. We also have laid out in our code of ordinances, some additional rules in chapter 30 about how we conduct our council and what we do. Those two things were not used to create the code of conduct and ethics. This is specifically about ethics and the way we conduct ourselves. The chapter 30 and what I also would like to talk about as far as the way we proceed within council is more about how we do things in council and what different kinds of meetings we can have. And you have an example in front of you, do you or not?
No.
No, right here, thank you. Yeah. And we'll pass these around. This is a sample of the code of conduct from the city of Crestwell. And that kind of will give you an idea of where my head is going. There you go. Now, Paul.
No, I was just, you talked about all the staff, the volunteers and the like, and I would like to know what happens to them after they sign them, and if, how many of the staff, the volunteers and the committee and the commission people actually sign them. I haven't signed one, and I've been in 2 years. I don't remember signing one.
You signed one.
Yeah, I don't know where's that.
Well, I think
I
that's
should
a
have,
good
if I
question.
did, I don't remember signing it.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and it's a fair question, because it seems like whenever we have had issues in council, we get scared. That's fine. We all of a sudden this code of conduct comes up and somebody says, you need to sign this again, and it's like, well, I've signed it already. I've probably signed it twice, but I don't know where it's kept. I would like to be able to reinitial what I've already signed as a continuing thing, if indeed we have to re-sign it. So I think that's a really good, the way we use this
Yep.
isn't meant to be a hammer. It's meant to be a guideline so that we walk a path that is ethical and open and fair.
Do you bring a copy of that? That you're talking about? No, for the thing for us all time.
No,
Okay.
I didn't.
It was in your council book too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me copies.
I'm seeing the other things, I'm just not seeing that one.
So,
The one this is what he's talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That one right there, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the one that says down there, all the staff and volunteer and everybody should have signed this, and
Yeah.
there's probably, I don't know,
so
like I said,
Um,
once we sign it, then where does it go from there? Do we get it back to the person?
no, we don't get it back, although I would assume that you get a copy, although it should be given and kept in one place. I don't know where it's stored. I'm assuming the city recorder has a copy of it, but we can definitely direct and ask that that is done.
Yep, and everybody, all employees, and especially the committees, even these new committees, was he given one, the one?
I signed one when I went on the ODAC committee before I was counselor. So I know,
Dated, and how long was it good for?
well, as long as you are serving, it is good that long, I would think, unless you have another opinion.
No, I've been on the budget committee for a long time, and I've
Have you ever signed one?
Never.
Well, see, and that's,
And yet we're talking a lot.
that's a really good point, there needs to be that consistency, yeah.
I put a lot of thought into this because, we do know, as I've been looking on our website, looking at everything, and we do have, things that we use to govern us, and that's our state laws, our charter,
Right.
the chapter 30, the 2016 resolution that was done, and then Robert's Rules of Order that we used to help with this. So I was looking at the code of conduct, and when I'm looking at it, I couldn't determine when it was developed, what day it was signed, who signed it. But one of the things that I think would help with the code of conduct is within our application process for all the boards, the committees, everything, this become a piece of that. This be handed out to people as they're applying for those positions. And there's a signature line that says, I have seen and acknowledge that I've reviewed the personal code of conduct, and have a date on this thing of when it was last revised, or last adopted by city council on such and such a date. that really defines it. And I feel like the code of conduct can be, redone in a way to where part of it really speaks to everybody, that from volunteers to staff to all of us, and then some of it can really speak to, people that are on, specific positions like council and your planning commission. Some of it applies to them a little bit.
So are you looking to expand this or split it apart?
I think just rework it. I don't think about expanding it to be included in our application process.
So do you see an advantage to that as opposed to when someone is appointed to a committee and at their first meeting be asked to sign it?
Well, the advantage I see is what we've already heard here, is that people are saying, I've never signed it.
It's a part of the
And so
orientation process if you do it.
So we don't have an orientation process.
No.
That's a good word.
So I think it's important that it's given to people up front.
So
And-
they
Oh, go ahead.
Upfront.
they
when
have an
they're
idea of what their
appointed,
expectation is.
Upfront when they're appointed, upfront.
When they apply.
Well, I don't think you wanna do it when you apply because they're not
Okay,
appointed.
when you apply, here's some of the, I have.
Yeah, I looked at them.
Okay, and when you look at these, and the things I asked Mr. Messina, and the gentleman's right here, so when I see right here, you know, for a background check, who's doing these background checks? I ask you as a chief,
On who?
any of your
Like,
committees,
there's some people we cannot give background checks to. We can give back, in the background, like the background check that my people take are much different than anyone else for the city takes. There's a lot of laws regarding background checks. We can do a minimal background check on volunteers. But a minimal,
but right.
and we can't, and as far as I know, with even labor law, you can only do background checks on certain people if you offer them a job. You can't do it until you offer them a job.
So then, I filled a lot of these out through the years. There never was anything about a background check, and now I see popped up right here, a background check. So this individual, give me his date, give me where he's born, I can go in as a citizen, cause I got this here, or as a counselor, or as public record, and you know what? That's wrong. So I don't know how that got put in there when it's never been in there before, because I can show you, I've been on, like I said, I've been on a lot of committees. I have 20 years of being here, and I've been on a lot of them.
I remember it being on mine.
Okay, on yours, how many years you been doing this?
Well, that's not,
Well,
I'm
no, but
saying,
that's
but I
what,
remember it being on mine, so I don't
right,
know.
when did you
when that came up.
do this?
When did I do that? I've done more
When?
than one of those.
Okay, but when did you first
So
start?
I think the question here
Is,
and
should that be on
should
there or
it be
not?
on there, and perhaps what we need to do is identify it as an item we would like to look into, either as a subcommittee, and the administration committee can look into that. So what is our application? Does it need updated? Are there things on there that aren't appropriate or unenforceable?
Yeah.
Like background checks that we couldn't do anyway because it's not appropriate for that committee. And so we could assign that to the admin committee and ask them, that would be one of their tasks. Because as we move forward and talk about committees, that's one of the problems, is that we have committees and we don't assign them tasks. We don't know what their purpose is, and yet we don't need to do all that of ourselves.
Right,
It's really a great
but
point.
we all did, in the committees. You know, I've been in committees, I've been in the safety, before Kevin came here, I was in the safety committee for the city, you know. A lot of years I've been doing it, and then always, and Mr. Hampton, we may never got along that good, but you know what, Mr. Hampton, as the mayor, ask everybody, every time we go to a council meeting, and I got 20 years to go one of these things, and I went 7 years everyone. All these committees was brought forward, and we got to hear from the committees.
You mean as far as reporting back to the
Yes,
council?
and we have not.
Yes, and that's something, that's one of the reasons why we're looking at committees, and we will start doing that, so that committees report back. Those reports will be at the first meeting of the month, because committees will report back to council at then, so that we know what's happening
And who is on the committee? See, that's where we have,
That's a good topic to bring up in our work session, when we talk about vacancies and all that stuff. Can we go back to Kevin on that, what you said? Were you saying that we cannot do background checks on volunteers?
On volunteers, we probably could.
We could.
But some of these committees, that's pushing it a little bit for volunteers, because there's a lot of legal ramifications in the background. In fact, my department doesn't do the background checks on them anyway. There's certain ones that the NCIC, which is the FBI who runs people. Certain ones we can do, certain ones we can't.
Can you enlighten us a little bit why we can't?
So there's a lot of them that actually Oregon State Police, even the police department, we have to pay money to have them do it. We can't go down to our terminal downstairs and do it. It's not appropriate for us to do that. And it's called LEDs,
Uh-huh,
law
yeah,
enforcement
I'm
agencies.
familiar with
They
that.
tell us what we can and can't do.
Okay,
So that's all a Michael thing. She has all the training in that.
so let me throw you an example. I'm trying not to go down a rabbit hole, but
We can go right down rabbit hole.
library vacancies, I'm just an example, let's say we wanna do a background check on library seats, on the vacancies. Can you do that? And my thought process is, that's a place where children is, we want to know.
That would be a
what's
touchy one, and I would say that we'd have to seek legal advice on that.
Okay, 'cause to
Okay.
me, that's a really
Because the people
important.
that work in the library, absolutely, I totally believe they have to have a background check, because they could be
Okay.
around kids.
Yeah,
The people on the library board,
I don't know what the
That's
committee.
but we have other committees that are working with youth programs.
if they're around kids, they have to have a background check.
Okay, I mean, even counselors, we have, the high schoolers are required to attend council meetings. So,
A public
How about somebody on a budget committee, which is dealing with the budget, the money, should they have a background check?
I can't answer that question.
I don't know.
That
Those
is-
are all really good questions, and we'll have to look at those, look at that. I mean, I think this is really important that we don't ask for, put something on an application that
that's gonna put us in trouble.
is either gonna put us in trouble or
But that's
Done.
very
not
odd.
in trouble.
Done. Do
Yeah.
counselors need to have a background check?
I know,
Nope.
not that I know of.
I'm willing to put a background check.
Nope.
I think I should.
Yeah, but they're not required.
Yeah,
They
that's-
get
Yeah,
elected.
no, but you need to white out what's
Oh.
on there.
Okay,
because
so-
They're elected.
I don't
So
want.
this
We're
is
not
all
Oregon allows
reviewed.
people that have
I
felony
mean, I
convictions.
True,
I did hear that.
So
So-
why not
They-
put it on, white it out?
Well, the day you were born.
All right, counselors, so,
you were born,
As a summing
Yeah.
it up, Don and Lauren,
Yeah, that's,
That's okay with you?
yeah.
Don and Lauren. Guys are such talkers. So as to sum this up, we're gonna put this on a topic to discuss at our work session when we talk about committees. Right?
Good.
Okay. All right.
We're having fun, aren't we?
Committee and the requirements.
Back to the code of conduct,
Back to
is
code of
this a
conduct.
resolution? This right here?
It does not say.
It was not a resolution.
It was sent to Dawn Kenyon when she was a counselor from Louis Gomez as a resolution in the email. If you read the email that she,
Well,
right?
I'm not worried about what Don Kenyon got as a counselor and whether it was a resolution or not.
But
What I
it's
am
stated
worried
in the
about whether or
minutes.
not this is, so, you know,
This right here?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
was it ever a resolution?
It is a resolution.
Yeah.
It does not, it doesn't say it's a resolution
But it was
anywhere.
supposed to
It's
be.
not identified as a one.
But it was in the minutes that it was.
Okay, back up. This may not have been a resolution. It may have been turned into a resolution, and that's what we can determine. So I'm not gonna know that from this piece of paper.
Yeah.
So we'll have to look at the code of, the codification book, and see if there is a resolution in there.
But it was in the minutes.
Then if it was in the minutes, then yes. So you're referring to information I don't have. So I can't tell you that.
I was under the assumption we all read that email from her, that was, and I look at the minutes as a formal document of record of what happened, and this was made a resolution at that time.
Okay. Then I'm not
Okay.
saying you're wrong. I'm just saying this isn't a resolution.
We can, when we find out, it would be good to have that
That's
on
my-
the document.
that's
That's
what
by council resolution.
And that is
such
my
such
point,
a
that's
date.
why I'm bringing this up,
There you
because
go.
this should have the resolution number on it, and it does not. And my next question is, if this has been changed from what we have today, from what this currently was supposed to be a resolution, has that been brought forward to council? So for instance, if there was a new code of conduct,
Was it, well, I don't know. We'll have to research. That's something I can't tell you.
So, even with all that information, if we look at changing it, if we change it, we change it, and
We have
then
to
we
amend
can say that it replaces any of the title.
Right.
And we can kind of skip and bypass going and see
So-
when and what happened.
Right.
Where and save ourselves some time.
Right. So we have the code, we have this, and it's well worth looking through, annotating to determine what you think is appropriate, what isn't appropriate, what you think isn't missing out of there. But then, you know, we also have, you know, how do we proceed as a council, which is different than this. You know, what kind of things we do. So the question is, I saw Paul looking at his watch, it's 5:30, I thought, ready to take a break.
No,
Okay.
So, you know what, as I was looking through all of this, I mean, there's definitely some pieces that are missing that I think are important for our group. So some of the things that I identified, is that there's no, within any of this, there's no real clear process for, when somebody submits an application for one of our committees or something that comes before us. So there's nothing, there's no process for that.
A process for applications for
Yeah,
committees?
so, I'm looking at
Is that what
notes.
you're saying?
So I have, I'll go through these. So, some of the other things I identified was missing posting requirements. So I couldn't find anything about that. So if we have a vacancy,
So,
then we post that. There's nothing within any of the stuff that I reviewed between the charter, the.
oh, so you're not talking about just this?
No, I'm not
Okay,
talking
good.
about this,
Good,
just
good,
this. I'm talking about in general.
Yes,
There's a lot of things that are missing and,
and that's why,
and I think we need to really look at that and create a new resolution and really.
and I would really encourage everybody to take some time to read what the city press will has. The city, Cottage Groves also has a really good rules, to see what we are missing, because we are missing pieces, which I think if we had would really have been helpful in past times, in history. And moving forward, we wanna make sure we take care of that. So, this isn't something that we can tackle today.
No.
But there are a few things that I do wanna talk about today, that I'm hoping that as a council, we can kinda just wrap our heads around as far as, the way we conduct, not ourselves, but just conduct the meeting. You know, and, I wanna make sure that we're, in agreement as far as, having the two meetings, one being a work session, the first of the month, and the second one being a business meeting. That doesn't preclude any business we might have to have done.
So only one
Because of
business
timing.
meeting a month?
So a business meeting would be the last one, and one. And then the first meeting would be mostly a work session, a time for presentations, a time for like the city engineer to come.
So
that kind of
if you
thing.
did, let me see if I follow.
Yeah.
So if you had a meeting made, before you had that meeting, why can't you have a work session to discuss if it's a minor thing that's gonna go fly right through it?
That's another way to do it.
Because the mayor, you know, I've been to a few of these, and watched a lot of them. And a lot of times, different towns, exactly, the mayor, you know, which, I think you have that position. The mayor brings this and calls a work session before.
Right.
The main council meeting.
And that is another way of doing it.
Of seeing, so if it's a minor thing, at least you can familiarize yourself with what the problem
Well,
and what.
And that is one of the reasons for doing a first meeting as a work session, to go over agenda items. It's also an opportunity for council to bring to that meeting, these are things I would like to look at the agenda, have put on the agenda. The council can then talk about it informally and determine whether we do want to bring it up as an agenda item, whether we want to ask the city administrator to gather more information and present it to us at the next meeting, whether we don't think it's worth being an agenda item. And it helps us use a work session and a business meeting so that we can get through the things we need to and not combine the two. Now, that makes a lot of sense. Some cities do meet like an hour ahead of time or half an hour ahead of time to review and have an agenda session. So they review the agenda, talk about any issues that are on it, questions you have about the pieces that are on the agenda, and then they move into the meeting. I kind of feel like this council is so new that having one meeting in the first of the month that is dedicated to talking about agenda items, learning about things we need to learn about, asking people to come in and talk to us, doing training during that time, whether that be like online or having someone from LCOG come up and talk to us about a specific issue, public meetings laws or whatever it is, that would be beneficial. That's just an idea. That's one way to do it.
Okay, this first agenda that we got, I presume you made this?
Yeah.
Did you do this agenda?
I did. Did I what?
Did you make this agenda?
Yes. Well, yes, I did.
I mean,
The form of it.
But you got this, you put this agenda together. Are you the individual who did this?
Yes. Rick filled in the details.
So she laid the format.
I laid out the format. I said, this is how I would like to see the agenda go, and just the way the meeting runs. And then Rick filled it in. So that was just, I mean, while the mayor runs the meeting, it is up to council to determine agenda too. It's actually up to the city administrator, according to our charter, to fill in the agenda as far as this is what we're going to be talking about and then any counselor can add to that agenda. But there needs to be some rules behind that says, if you have something you know you want on an agenda, then make sure that you get it to the city administrator 10 days before, so that there's time to prepare the proper information and then get it on to the agenda. It's not, I don't think it's wise, and I don't think it's respectful to throw things onto agenda at the last minute. Either staff won't have time to prepare, council won't have time to determine it, we'll have to discuss it, take up time during that, when we could perhaps do it a different way. So I'm looking for a way to educate our council, because we're new, a way for us to take the time to really think about agenda items, ask questions about what they mean, bring up details, and then move to the next meeting to actually look at that agenda bill on the meeting agenda and pass it or fail it or whatever we're gonna do with it. That's where I'm going.
Well,
Now,
in looking at your agenda that you made, I couldn't understand why you changed everything, the floor mat and stuff. I really don't understand it, because, you know, it was pretty, Mr. Hampton did a good job, I believe, when he made this agenda.
so you like the former agenda?
I absolutely liked it, because
Okay.
the way it was laid out, it was, it's cleaner.
Okay.
I'm sorry that, I think you're right, I think certain things, because we discussed this in the meeting before we ever got sworn in. And part of it, I think you're right, but if this one wasn't completed the other day, because you never did get public comment at the end.
Yes, I did. I asked for public comment. I asked council if they had any other thing to say, and I asked public, if there was any additional comments,
Okay.
and there was none.
Remember, this was all videoed. That's what, all
Yeah.
these meetings are very important now for documentation.
Are you
for what
telling me
we're
that I
doing.
didn't?
I don't know, have you looked at the video?
I know that I did. Thank you.
I agree, I
Thank you.
heard it.
So, but thank you for that statement. So that's open for discussion too, and,
Okay.
you know, as far as the agenda.
One person approached me about it, and the one, I like it, but the one piece that, I heard something about was making sure we have the pledge of allegiance in the beginning still.
And we will all the time, except we
Okay.
had people to be
Okay.
sworn in.
Okay, yeah, that was the only comment.
How do you swear people in without having a pledge?
Well, I don't know, perhaps because this guy is blue today. I don't know how to answer your question. I don't know how to answer that.
Well, in the pledge,
Okay,
Do
well,
we
that,
really wanna go down this?
well, I kinda do, because in the pledge, you know,
well, Kathy was not the mayor at that time, Judy was the mayor, so
well,
Judy's,
whoever was is the
I
problem.
understand, but Judy started that meeting, that was not Kathy's decision how
Sorry
that
about
happened, Judy started that. So, I do like most of the things about the new agenda. I am a little concerned about how easy it's going to be about having public comment on each. Remember how we could change it, cause Dawn was kind of forgotten, I could see that being difficult to keep organized, having the public comment instead. I kinda liked in the beginning allowing the public to comment on agenda items, that way we hear it.
I think one of the reasons why, so maybe we can figure out how to meld that together, because what happens often is that the public comments in the beginning on what we haven't discussed, they're commenting before they've had the benefit of reading, of having the ordinance read, or the resolution read, and the staff report on it.
And I agree with what you're saying, that could be taken both ways, cause we haven't had a chance to hear them as well.
Well, it's in the packet, I mean, they just read the staff report.
No, I mean what the person from the public has to say about an issue.
So then that would be the next step, would be for have public comment, and then the next step would be our discussion. And then you would have the opportunity to talk about what you just heard someone mention.
Yeah, so then are you saying that each agenda topic at the end of that agenda topic, when we're done discussing it, should we ask for public comment, or how do you
No,
want?
I think what I'm looking at is just those things that are resolutions and ordinances.
Okay,
So that when it's presented and when we say here is this, resolution, and we ask whoever it is to read the bill, do the staff report, and then we can ask for public comment on it. Is there anybody who has anything to say on this specific bill?
okay.
And then council will have the opportunity to do their discussion, and then we'll make a motion.
So the public has their opportunity to comment before we vote.
Right, right. And then in the beginning, it's things that are just agenda, non-agenda items.
Gotcha.
And then at the end, I just would like to ask anyone who we haven't, if there's anything they wanted to say about it. As long as we have time, after we're already at the deadline, we might not, but, we can move forward. John?
A lot of things are read by title only, so how would you consider that something a public could comment on?
Yeah, and those things, and that doesn't happen very often, that we read by title only. That's a good question. That's a good question.
Just throwing
Well
it out
worth
there.
considering
Sorry.
that. And I would certainly be willing, I'm not wedded to this in any way. So I'm certainly willing to eliminate that out of there and go on.
Well, I'm curious, is the full agenda packet published, or is it on the website?
No, so just the agenda.
I think Rick and I talked about that.
The agenda's on the website. It can be made available in paper form if someone wants to come in. Now, I actually don't know, if you come in to pick up the agenda, is it the full packet?
For counselors, yes.
Yeah, for counselors, yeah.
No, I know for counselors, but I mean for public.
Well, it wouldn't be for until it's gone across the diocese.
Right,
Before
okay,
it comes
so
to the
no, they don't
council.
have that opportunity to see that. So I think Don, who asked that question at the council meeting, you were exactly right, and I was exactly wrong.
And then but then who's gonna pay for it if the public wants it? You know, that's a lot of paper for us to be printing out.
Well, you don't get it
They don't
until,
get
they
it
don't
back.
get this.
I know, that's what I'm saying, but it sounds like people saying, why can't the public, understand what we're talking about?
They can come, in,
Yeah.
to me, through the years,
It'd be simple if we just put it on the website,
Yes.
that saves us paper, and it's a PDF, click from.
Yeah, put it on the website, it should be on.
And if you really want it,
You're
anybody
right now?
that has a thing can print it out and give it to them, That's what happened at the last one, because a lot of
So
stuff
we'll
was.
put it with the PDF, we'll put the PDF on the website?
Yeah, well, we'll talk, and I have been talking to Rick. One of the things that may be a little different is this is from my experience, council, and we've also, if you've noticed, we're trying to get the full agenda packet done Thursday,
Yes.
Friday, so you
Yes.
have it for a
Thank you.
full weekend before the meeting. But we also need to talk about getting you in here before 5 o'clock on Fridays to get it.
Yeah.
But the other thing that Rick and I have talked about, and my training is, council gets this first. And then we can publish it full on Monday. And if we can get it to you on Thursday or Friday, and then the public gets the whole thing. And what that does is, this is your agenda, and it gives you a chance to go through it, see what's in here before the phone starts ringing off the hook, because somebody
has
in the
a question
community
about it.
said, what are you people doing? And you have been at work, you've been busy, you haven't had a chance to look through it. So you'll get it first, and then it'll be available to the public, hopefully by Monday or Tuesday.
I really like that. Can I ask if we get it, you're saying Thursday or Friday?
Thursday or
Before the
Friday.
weekend.
Yeah.
We have all weekend to review it. Let's say I read it and go, oh man, I forgot to let Phil know about that one topic. Can that be added Monday morning and be put into the new agenda before it's posted to the public?
Well, I think that's
I'm
one of the
gonna say
things.
maybe.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we're talking about here is there has to be a deadline for getting
Exactly.
agenda items
Yeah.
to the city administrator to put on the agenda. We can't
Yeah.
wait until the day before or 2 days before. So,
Yeah.
so for example, if the agenda is to come out on Thursday or Friday, any agenda items you would like on the agenda should be given to the city administrator
Wednesday,
by Tuesday. Tuesday, no later than Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Because then that only gives them, I mean, in case there is something.
And one of the things that we've talked about is to send council just the cover sheet of what's coming up in the agenda,
Mhm.
Tuesday and Wednesday.
Mhm.
But we wanna be flexible, particularly if it's something, if it's something that can wait, then it probably can wait. And I'm gonna also couch it from staff's position. Sometimes we have to bring stuff to you at the council meeting, if there's a possible, we need a council resolution for this grant, this emergency spending came in, something broke, and it's gonna cost $20,000, and we need you to say yes. So sometimes, we will bring things in that there hasn't been out there with a lot of time to digest, but for the most part, and what I've talked to staff about is we wanna make sure that you get plenty of time to look through your agenda before the public sees what's going on and before your meeting, so.
So the answer to my question, if I were to get a council packet in my email on Thursday, and then I remembered or something I forgot, could I tell you or sometime throughout the window before Monday, 8 AM, you got an email for me, could it be changed on just the agenda or added? No. I would
Mayor's
have to-
shaking her head, and I'll say, it honestly, it depends on what the item is.
I mean,
It
if
could
it's a
be
last
something
minute
that we
thing, it has to
really,
be done.
if it's date sensitive,
Yeah.
has to be passed by a certain date, sure.
It seems like it'd be more appropriate though to ask before Monday morning versus asking at a council meeting and having it added on the agenda right then and there.
Well, I think we're trying to build in as much time as we possibly can. That is one of the reasons why it would be nice to have council meet together on that first meeting in the month to talk about agenda items that they are looking forward, that they would like to talk and discuss about, changing the application process. We had lots come up to that first meeting that if we had the opportunity to consider, we could consider as a council and say, oh, well, we will move this forward into an agenda item. Or we need to move it into an agenda item, but it needs research first. So can we ask staff to research it, get back to the council with their findings, and then council can determine when they wanna deal with it on the agenda. We have a lot of things, we have a few things that have time-sensitive things, time sensitivity to it, so they have to be done, like things you brought up. But we have other things that we don't have time sensitivity to, and I would like us to become more aware and do things a little more carefully and with deliberateness about considering items for the agenda, and being able to consider that item and put some good thought into it, so that we're absolutely positive about how you're voting. What, are you saying yes to something and you really are comfortable with what you're saying? So that's one way to do it. To prioritize some of it, because not everything has to be done immediately. So my feeling is that if you haven't gotten something to the city administrator by Tuesday, at 5 o'clock, it's not gonna be to a conclusion on the agenda unless there's a time sensitivity to it. That it has to be looked at, and that very well may be, because we do have people running at the last minute and ask for, oh, I have to get permission to do this, I have to get permission to do that, so. I understand that. That's what I'm looking at. Now, if you think that's too cut and dry. Yeah, I guess so.
I just have a very quick question, Mary. If we have a work session instead of a business meeting on the first meeting of the month, is that gonna be held here, or are we gonna do that in the WAC?
I know, we haven't decided that. I would say it would be a
Because talking about public input on some of these resolutions and things, if it's been discussed at the work session, that the public's been told about and able to attend, although we don't have input, at least we can hear what's being talked about, and then we can make our public comment at the actual meeting, because there's not enough space.
So let's just say the WAC.
Yeah, it'd probably be better, 'cause more
That we
room.
will help hold those meetings at
Yeah.
WAC all the time. That makes sense. Dawn, yeah.
I just wanted to remind you that there is something in Robert's Rules of Order about being able to add items at the meeting to the
Yes.
agenda.
Yes, there is, and any counselor has the right to add an agenda item. These are just rules that we can choose to follow ourselves and say, as a rule, a general rule.
A general,
We
yeah.
wanna make sure that this happens, but yeah, you're not prohibited from doing that. Just like in Robert's Rules of Order, any counselor can continue to talk for as long as they want to talk. It's a council rule that, I know, it is most council rules that, you say, 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, but there is no in Robert's Rules of Order, there is no reason for the mayor or for another counselor to interrupt a council member who has the floor.
So is there a time limit for this council and the rules? I'm just curious.
I thought I read something.
There is somewhere. No, there isn't. No, there is not a number.
Lee?
9 p.m. is one thing that's been established
But we
somewhere.
established we need to have the meeting done by 9, so if you start talking and 9 o'clock comes.
I just
You're
wanna
done.
make sure Stan doesn't hog the floor.
Okay. Yeah, so.
that could happen.
So what is an agreed upon time that counselors need to have agenda topics into staff before published? When's the deadline that would be reasonable?
You know, I wanna say it's gonna depend a little bit on how much, what they got, what's the issue, how much, whatever has to be done. And I'm trying to remember, I'm changing gears, was it 10 days was kind of what you were talking about?
Yeah, I think we're talking about Tuesday before the Tuesday before the
Tuesday,
week
the week before the meeting.
of the meeting.
That would be ideal. That's,
So that only after your council meeting, only gives you a couple days to get your topic into the staff if you have a topic.
Yeah, because think about it this way, at least for me, this is how I justify it to be, and it may not make sense, is that agenda items are things that you realize in your community you want to address. And it could be specific items like, I think we really have to address the swing sets at Green Waters Park. Or it could be other items such as, I really don't like the way this ordinance reads, I think it's confusing. Or a completely new topic of, I think we need an ordinance that addresses this. Those are things that each of us, we need to be thinking about individually, and you can bring to council. There will always be items that the city administration will bring to council and say you need to consider. But these are items that you as a counselor are near and dear to your heart, or you realize is something that's important, and you want to bring to place on the agenda for the council to discuss. So this isn't just, the last minute, I got out of my car and I thought, oh, hey, this is a great idea. It's something that this is your agenda, this is your, perhaps what you even ran on as a counselor. This is something you want to do. I know Mr. Hadley has lots of things. He probably has a list on his bathroom wall that says, I want all these things addressed, and that's his agenda items. Those are the things he needs to bring to council. So that's how I look at it.
well, and I believe that when we were talking about this, I think before you were sworn in, that the purpose of the work study was just for that purpose. Each counselor, I wanna talk about whatever it is you wanna talk about. I wanna talk about swing sets. I wanna talk about the water system.
We can decide then what goes on the next agenda.
And talk about, okay, is this something pertinent that really needs action and needs to be, I wanna talk about the code of conduct and ethics, and I would like some changes, and these are the changes I propose. Could you bring forth, if council agrees in the work session, staff bring forth a resolution for the next meeting. So that's, as talking to the mayor, that's kind of how she's been feeling that the work session would really work in the business of the council forward into the council meeting.
Mr. Hadley?
Okay, I understand what you're saying. And so I got all the ordinances and stuff that has been done. Through the years, I printed them all out. And I know there's been changes, but when I go on the website, we don't see any changes. I can't even find the ordinances in there. Who is the responsible party to keep this up?
That is a great agenda item, because we know that we have to update that code. And we can do that, first of all, this is an item that actually in the admin committee, Louie and I had talked about, 6 months ago, I guess, about starting that process by having the admin committee gather up all the ordinances that have been added since that book was done, and put them in the right spot. And then that usually gets sent out to a firm and they codify it. And so what they do, codify it. And what they do is not only just add them all in, but they go through and look and go, okay, if this ordinance eliminated this ordinance, if this ordinance refers to this ordinance, and just completely put it in the right language and in the right, and then we get back that book coded again, of ordinances.
Right.
And you're right, that needs to be
See,
done.
because when I look at, me and James is very close for 10 years, and James comes to me for information. So when I look through the years, you'd say, Don, can I see this agenda? Can you tell me this ordinance? I got the planning commission ordinances. I have all of them from original. So when I see stuff that has been done, no changes, and then I have heard the city administrator, not this one, but the city administrator say, yes, we're gonna do that. I heard Paul say something in one of the meetings I bring up that, because it kind of bothered us in the last thing. People putting in these committees. And he said, and if you look at the minutes, he did say that something needs to be done. We need a time lapse, something, if you put this committee paperwork in to the city hall, it needs to get to our agenda packet. And when I see that several of them didn't come to the agenda,
So you're talking about applications, huh?
yes, I'm talking about that is one of the things, needs to be, I understand we wanna take the dates off, but I know that it was made, he did it. Louis said, I'll take care of it, and there was, cause I went back and watched tapes, and that was pretty interesting to me, so then I did bring it up, oh, did I not, Paul? And
But there should be date and stamps that goes through there.
so it's a simple thing, you know, for staff to
Right.
make sure that, you know, when this paperwork come in, so this person says, well, I put it in, well, that's why when I this last one,
And
four of
then-
them called.
One of
And
those,
we talked about that when we had our meeting.
so that's one of those things that when we bring up, when we sit and talk about our committees, and we're gonna talk about the application process, it's also, that needs to be added to it. Because you're right, there are too many things that get said and then we don't follow through with them. That's one of the reasons why I'm trying to like put some boundaries around the process so that we have the ability to take a minute to think about what we're gonna do and record what we do and okay, what's the next step? We just can't do it on the fly all the time. And I have felt, as a counselor for the past couple of years, that a lot of this was just on the fly. It's like, well, okay, what am I doing? Oh, okay, yeah, all right. I don't have an opportunity to change anything or to bring anything up. Or I do, but I didn't take that responsibility. This isn't anybody's fault but my own. As a counselor, I needed to own that, and I didn't. And a lot of the counselors didn't. So we're just waiting to do whatever it is we were told. And so this is an opportunity, because I've had that experience, for me to build that into the way we have our council meetings. So we will do that, and we can do that. So that's my 2 cents. But you're right.
It's just like the ODAC committee. I got all original ODAC committee, all the paperwork.
Yeah.
All of it. And so when you look at the ODAC, it had rules,
Yes,
but the rules have been changed.
yes.
So if you see that the rules have been changed, where do you go to find out where these
I know.
new changes?
I know, they just passed the new
Bizarre.
ordinance and all of that, so that,
But I have the ordinance as it was, and it's so confusing, you go in there in your thing, and this, to me, this is something for the citizens.
yes,
If I'm sitting outside and I say, okay, can I park a trailer on my piece of property? Well, I have to go look at the ordinances, and guess what? Half of the stuff is not there, so,
it is an issue.
and then they come to you, or
It is an
me,
issue,
or,
and I send them to you.
yeah, well, please, quit doing that. I have plenty coming to me without anybody sending them.
All right, let's
So
get back.
can we go back to council rules? We didn't really discuss it, we're like, go one here
And
like
what happens
that.
is,
Just to take a look at them and see what we think. My thought would be to maybe develop a small subcommittee to look at them in more detail and just kind of pull together some sort of resolution.
I think that's a good idea. I think that's a great idea, and there should be a subcommittee of the council.
Absolutely.
I hope
So, and since I
so.
really would like to see this happen, I'm more than willing to participate in that.
Is there any other council that wants to, all you want to tell me that?
It's hard on my
I
schedule.
know it is.
Yeah.
Does anybody?
I will let
enough things to do.
Yes. I don't mind participating in it also, but I want to make sure that,
well, I'm willing to do it, because I'll bring a lot of the stuff that I already have for these committees, that laws and stuff, and what's been done. And actually, these things have been put out before.
okay, well, we need to be specific
Just like-
about what this
Okay,
is.
just like,
Are we talking about the code of ethics, or are we
okay,
talking
if you
about
have the
council
code of
rules?
ethics and you put this together, right?
Hold on, Are you talking about code of this, or
I
are you
am.
talking about council rules?
I think they all,
I don't think they're the same, they're two different things.
They're different.
Code of ethics covers how you conduct yourself. And also covers staff and volunteers and everything else. But council rules is how we conduct our meetings, as well as how we conduct.
And if we break
in
these
the
rules, what happens to an individual for, this is something to, can you
Yes.
tell me what happens? What, let's say for instance,
Well, and that's one of the things that
That needs
we'll
to be
also
done.
consider, is what are the consequences if we don't do that? So which are you talking about that you wanna be a part of? Because you can't do both at the same time, they really need to be separate.
I want to take them one step at a time.
That's what I'm saying,
One
which
big
one?
Yeah.
Which one do you
So
wanna
which
do?
one?
so we really have no council rules that are just a council rule, they're all
Chapter
found in
30.
a lot of different places.
Yeah, we don't have any of those, that's
So
why,
This one is technically already a resolution.
that's code of ethics.
I
That's
know,
but it's
not
a
the council
resolution.
rules.
I know,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
exactly.
saying, it's already a resolution,
Yes,
so
it
it would be very quick for us to take a look at this one.
True.
Yes.
You wanna start with that?
I think this one makes more sense because
Okay.
it's already done. We can look at it, maybe it's great, maybe it just needs a little bit of modification.
Okay.
But it already in the email has a resolution number and anything, it just for some reason didn't get transferred onto this.
And then if
This
it did get
one.
transferred, then how do we know it's actual?
Because it's in the
It's
meeting
in the
minutes,
minutes.
which is,
Yeah.
yeah, that's where.
And the
But this
resolution
one-
can easily be amended.
Yes,
Correct.
we can amend the resolution.
But this one, I have barely gotta look at this, but I do like it, but this would probably be a little bit more work.
Okay, let's start with this. And, we'll start with the code of ethics. And, Bobby,
Yes.
you and Chrissy,
Unless there's someone else that doesn't have a burning desire for it.
and Paul, and I know Dawn, you said. Okay, so the three of you, will look at this, pull up the resolution,
The code of ethics.
yeah, the code of ethics. Pull up the resolution, find the number, review what it says, and come back to the council with your recommendations.
So that's me, Don, and Chrissy.
Yes.
Would we come to the council at a work session first for that?
Yes, come to council at a work session, and so no longer, so let's just kind of say, let's not let it go any longer than the end of March, but when it's ready, bring it to the city administrator and say, okay, we're ready to
So,
do this.
so how about, since our first meeting in March, there's a work session, do we have an agreement that we're going to that?
Okay? So
March
first
7th,
meeting in
I think
March.
it is.
I think so.
Well, we got a workshop in February too? Oh, that's right, they're both the
Same.
same, okay.
Yeah,
Big
March
calendar.
7th, so no
Yeah.
later than March 7th, but we'll plan on that, March.
So I,
Yes,
the code of ethics part,
yes.
I think this is, I see there's some confusion there, cause I have some confusions, because this is a mix of council rules and code of ethics.
Yes,
And, just another thing, you should probably have a little bit of union buy-in, if you're gonna make the union people sign something, just at least, because that
Good
could,
point.
if they're gonna get punished for it later
Good
on, for
point.
something for the document
So
that they
do-
signed,
So could we add a couple people to this?
I would say that,
or do we not do one like this for employees that are covered by a union?
I think it's a good idea, but I think the council rules and the code of ethics should be separate.
And the other question that I would have with that, because I totally agree with you.
I do
Is-
too, but I'm
is
wondering
it-
if it's already a resolution, was it already ran by legal?
Don't think so.
Okay.
Well, maybe not legal is not the right word, but like,
I'm sorry, union.
if I change a policy and there's anything that has to do with
Oh,
collective bargaining in it, if I
Okay.
don't let them
Bargaining.
know, then later on, and we discipline someone for something that's a rule we made, we're gonna jam ourselves up, because if, they at least have to look at it and say, we looked at it, we don't care,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we have these issues, or go forth and conquer, that way they at least, even if you disagree and say we're doing this anyway, at least they have the opportunity to look at it.
So this committee then, when you look at it, that's one gonna be
It may have
something
already
you
been
need to
done.
return. Has it been reviewed
Yeah.
by the attorney? And you can find that out. You know,
That would be easy.
and the rest, that'll be easy, just check in with Suzie, and it hasn't been reviewed by the union. Does it violate, check with human resources, does it violate any of our, are we asking union employees to do something that we can't ask them to sign? And it may be that we just have to eliminate
the union
Staff.
employee, the only person that's a union employee is actually the city administrator, I think the union. I think it's a different, is it a different, do you still,
He's not a union.
no, I understand he's not a union man. He isn't a union man, but Kevin is a union man.
No.
You're not a
No.
union man, so he's a contract too. So who's
No.
union?
Exempt.
Department
Okay,
head
exempt.
So
employees.
who's the union person?
Everybody under Kevin would be union.
So the rest of the police accepted,
Yeah.
Yeah.
how much volunteers?
And
So
they're
that's,
not,
that's easy to figure out.
but it's,
Well,
yeah,
that's a good question though, because when this says volunteers and staff, does staff always mean all employees of the city? Or are we referring to staff of just, the city administrator?
I believe at some point in time, my people had signed
Had to
this.
sign this,
so,
okay.
yes.
So it'd be all city staff, anybody that works for the city.
So public works,
Yep.
Yeah, public works is union.
fire department?
Yep.
Okay, all right, okay. Yeah, so you have your job cut out for you.
It's fun, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, no, for real, to keep us in line, it's really good.
Well, I just wonder how much
One
punishment
person
I
signs
get.
something, everybody should sign it to report all,
I'm just hoping this was already ran by them.
hope so. Yeah.
Maybe double look back documentation and find something of that.
So then, when do you want to tackle this one?
Next
Be the
week,
next.
April. Oh,
Well, I
It
think
would be hard to wait all the way to.
I don't know, no, I think this for, okay, so one of the reasons why I think this is so important to me is, and Mr. Messina brought this to my attention verbally as well as through some things he handed me to read about hiring a city administrator, is that, you know, one of the marks of a good council is the ability to know how to operate together and to know how to work together. And council rules provide that framework so that we can begin to build that within it. The sooner we do that, the quicker we do that, the better chance we will have of securing the services of the city administrator, who is what we need to have. If we ask a city administrator to come in and we still haven't gotten our acts together as a council and we don't know what we're doing, we don't know what rules we're following, you know, the likelihood of someone saying, yeah, I'll come in and be your city administrator are much less than if we have our acts together.
Yeah.
And this will help us. So for me, I would like to have this done like soon so that we can all agree to how we're gonna do it and begin that process of practicing how we do that. Because it will take time. It's not gonna, it doesn't just come naturally.
And I heard that the League of Oregon Cities has a template also.
They do. They have a good template too, and it's called, their League of Oregon City rules are rules and procedures for council, I think is what it's called. And it is extensive. It's model rules of procedures for council meetings. So it is also very complete and clear. So that's something that we wanna also include in reading material, just to say, well, maybe, and when I talked to the legal aid, I think she was the legal aid for League of Oregon Cities, she said that many small cities just adopt this because it is so thorough. So that's something that we may want to consider as we read through it, is just go ahead and adopt this, go through it to make sure that it doesn't contradict anything in our charter, and tweak it as necessary, but use this as the guideline.
So,
We have a charter committee, review committee, coming.
That's coming.
And when I look at, League of Oregon Cities charter, because I'm very familiar with a lot of the charter that's been done. Some of the stuff is okay in there, and I look at the one where you went here in Cresswell, with the sheriff, a lot of stuff that's been done, and I understand. And some of this stuff actually butts heads.
It does, yeah, I mean, just, if you, for example, on Cresswell's rules and Cottage Grove's rules, I can't remember which is which, but one says no public comment is allowed in work sessions, the other one says public comment is allowed in work sessions, so they have determined that themselves. you know, that's one of the
And
things
that
that
can be
they
done.
decided, and that can be done, so
Yeah,
that's
so
what
as a
we
council
need to
body,
do.
it can be done, and
Absolutely,
as a hard mayor or soft mayor. That is something that, you know, in the meeting that I went to, they explained
right,
all that, and
Right.
that was something that,
and we have a
Actually,
soft
in there.
mayor system, I mean, to change that, we would have to, that would be charter changes, but, you know, that's,
but what are
that's
we
what
doing?
we're looking at.
So I think this is a topic really that shouldn't be a subcommittee, it really should be all counselors to be looking at that and looking at this, cause it's really all of us.
Mhm.
What if we set kind of some,
We get a
expectations for
copy of
us?
that, or is it our?
I
It's on
have
our
this
website.
You can
electronic,
get all of them, all, that, see, this is, to me, and the counselors, all of you,
this one isn't on the website.
but a
It's
lot
on
of,
the
the internet,
internet.
a lot of the stuff,
Did you?
Yeah, I have that, it's on our website.
yeah, all this paperwork, if
It's
you
on
look
the-
at, you know,
the
you have
league.
to spend time as counselors, but you can find everything. I didn't make up these things that I got, I went on,
No, so
me
to
and my
tell you,
wife
it's
printed them
electronic,
out.
okay, or I can give you a copy, either one,
I don't have a copy.
so,
I'm not very good in that darn.
yeah.
Doing that research, it's like,
You just ask your phone today, it'll tell you anything.
Okay.
yeah,
And if you'll notice on the League of Oregon Cities, if you go to the city handbook now, it's down, because they're revising it. I don't know when they'll get it back up again,
And
but,
they've been revising their website.
yeah, so, just so that you don't panic if you happen
Well,
to
it's
see it.
2019 and it's just.
Yeah, they're on top of things.
So, if we can all
So
set
we-
some expectations that we all look at this, look at that, and maybe by our next work session, we talk more about it, and then we try to come to an agreement for the March work session, cause then we could make some decisions on both the
One
code
on
of
the
conduct.
So Phil, what do we have for the next work session, February?
We have the possibility of 2 attorneys coming.
Possibility to attorney staff, introduction, presentations, is what I'm trying to say, orientation of new counselors by staff, of just talk about their departments and what they do, so you should have time.
Okay. Okay, so, we'll send out a list of everything to be looking at and a link to this and get hard copies to you and Stan. To look at this. And, you know, take time to review it, make notes, questions. If you have questions about things, go to Phil, you know, and say, well, what is that? Whatever it is that you have a question about, you can certainly reach out to him.
I almost, if we're looking at really reviewing it on the summer, I almost like we need a product that's kind of a generic product to really build off of if we're still looking at all these different pieces.
Well, it's these 2, so these would be the generic.
Yeah, but we still need to look at ordinances and.
Well, we're not gonna, well, this is all rules, I mean,
Yeah.
let's start this first and see the things, and then, I understand what you're saying, so where do our ordinances or our charter impact something that is said in here?
Correct.
Okay, so yes, you need to be looking at the charter too, but we'll put that together. Now, this isn't something that we'll just do and say, oh yeah, here it is, type it up and it's done. I mean, we're gonna also then, once we figure out what we think we should do, then we'll sit down and do that review of, is this okay with the charter? Is everything okay? And League of Oregon Cities will actually help us do that. They will review it with the charter and say, yeah, well, what you guys decided here kind of violates this. Fortunately, our charter isn't that complicated because it's not filled with this stuff.
Just
So-
certain wording,
Just certain
just
wording,
certain
yeah,
wording
exactly.
in there.
So, you know, we can always do that.
So what exactly are we going to do in the summer with this?
You're gonna bring back your notes about having looked at the rules and procedures from LOC and from Crestwell
Okay.
and see what you would like ours to be.
So your thoughts and opinions on February 7th.
So, and it doesn't, we don't just have to do Crestwell, can't we go out to other cities if we got, so we can bring that stuff?
If
Bring
you,
it, if it's
yeah.
good,
If you run
Because
across one that
Coquille-
you really like,
I,
then send it to the city administrator so that you can give it to everybody.
I have a
we can
lot
all
of
look
that
at it.
already done, and
Okay.
that's where we need.
10 or less.
It's my opinion of what I would like, so if I only send one.
Yeah, but if you do have something that you want the whole council to look at because you think, wow, this is spot on, I really like
Well,
this,
there
send
is-
it to Mr. Messina so
There
he
is
can give
some
it to all
good
of us.
literature out there from other cities.
Okay, so that's all our homework. Council homework. Okay, so,
Now you're cutting into my sleep time.
I'm sorry. Do you actually sleep? I also just wanna remind, counselors that if you're not going to be able to attend a meeting, make sure that you let the city administrator know. If you know you're gonna be on vacation, will you let him know, as soon as you know things like that, so that we can adjust agendas if perhaps we don't have enough people
And
or
so
whatever.
if you didn't show up in it, what happens to people if they don't come to these council meetings?
If you have notified the city administrator or the mayor ahead of time, and it is an excused absence, then it's an excused absence. If you don't tell anybody that you're not coming, it becomes an unexcused absence. And I think there is rules in the charter that says if you are not there for X amount of meetings, three meetings, or there's also something to do with, there's another phrase in there too. So there is.
I'll be at all of them.
I know you will be. I know.
I'm not gonna be tardy.
So just, and also if you can't attend physically, but you have the ability to attend, on the phone, that needs to be done ahead of time.
As long as you don't go to wherever you went last year, and the
Greece?
council don't Greece.
And they didn't call me.
And you didn't get called, cause I was waiting for the call and it didn't happen.
I know, and I was waiting too. I had, my Uzo in my hand and I was sitting on the beach, but I was waiting. Okay, so calendars. Anything else you wanna talk about? That, since we have the time? We do have the time, don't
I think council vacancy, sorry.
I think what you brought up earlier, Cassie, though, the codes to get recodified
Yeah.
and have a company that's really gonna look at them and cross-reference is very important, because in my job, in the code enforcement stuff especially, there's a lot of contradiction
Yeah.
especially between land use and code.
Mhm.
That this one says I have to tell this, give them this many days before they change something, this one says I have to do this many changes, the court's always gonna look at the longer one, so make sure they match.
I talked to a company that does that at the last Oregon Cities, I talked to her about it, and, she said, yeah, they'll come in and she says they have pre-prepared kind of packages you could buy, but she said they're willing to work with the city to do what we would like them to do. So if we put together, just get all the ordinances together for them in the right place, and then give it to them and they codify it. She said you can hire us, for a year, every year, and do an annual thing. That's anytime you get an ordinance, we'll automatically just throw it in there. Or you can do it on a yearly basis, once a year basis, or once every other year basis, or you can do it yourself with some guidelines. She says there is software that will allow you to, and we don't pass that in ordinances, so it's like, this may be something we can probably do ourselves, and then have them review it periodically to make sure it's right. So
I
there are
agree.
lots of different templates.
There's a lot of ordinance and stuff can be changed and wording right. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to do some of this
No,
stuff.
that's right. And
But I have asked all of my peers about ordinances, and smaller chiefs and much bigger chiefs said you are nuts for writing ordinances.
yes,
Your
Yes.
attorneys should be writing ordinances, and there's some cities that are the same as us, they're like, and we realize that too, a lot of times when you're just stealing someone else's ordinance and changing the name, that's fine, because a lot of cities are in the same financial deals that we are, because ordinances are very expensive.
and that's what I think, in the trade building, you saw at times when they referred to and said, check the language, please. And they said yes, or whatever. We don't know what they said.
So should that be a question we look for when we're referencing our
There you go.
attorney?
I think
What
that's
you're
an
saying?
awesome question, yeah. Ask them about ordinances.
Ask them how to work this. Okay, well, good. Anything else?
We got a hand on the back.
Hi, Audie.
I'd like to ask a question. Is a new member of planning committee, do we get a copy of all the ordinances?
Yeah. The planning,
Yeah,
yes.
Lauren would
Get a
know.
copy of the planning book, about yay thick. There's to memorize 1,885 pages.
There is a test.
And there will be testing weekly.
Okay, so
No,
there's, all the ordinances are in that.
All the
for
planning.
the planning.
Well, isn't it
Land
important
use.
that we know all the ordinances is passed to
we're only
To
dealing with
judgment.
planning, we're not dealing with civil authorities or anything. Planning, state, county, Oakridge, yeah.
And yours is updated, I'm assuming?
Yes,
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you'll have an
yeah.
updated copy.
yeah, right now we're doing mini homes. And the spec structures, county, state guidelines, rules and everything, so. It really is a good committee, very
So
well
when's your
regimented.
next meeting, Lauren, do you know?
I think the 17th, I
Tuesday.
believe, is it then? Okay, yeah, well, we'll just get together, get to know each other and
Usually
stuff.
the Tuesdays.
But it's well regimented, there's really
I don't have-
no latitude.
It's the 15th,
15th, okay, 15th.
and that's
Yes, the Tuesdays
Here?
before.
No, that'll be down at the,
Whack.
yeah, I believe it will, because it'll be a relaxed session, just to get to know you.
Well, it's a public, isn't it a public meeting? So.
Counselors can't go.
Yeah, counselors are not allowed.
Wait, hey,
Hey, what?
I'm a counselor.
Yeah, you're
I
not
said
allowed.
It is a public meeting.
No, you're not allowed, not to. you have
I'm
to
not
be-
allowed, I didn't say me, I'm a counselor. But
I
maybe
have a
this
question though, Lauren.
gentleman here wanted her, that
I
one
know
wanted
there
her.
is a subject that I want to give, as a private citizen, I would like to give testimony to.
Ex parte probably may
And
apply.
then do that and then.
May apply, I don't know the details,
I
but
was
if,
just
if it involves you, business transaction, land dealing, whatever, it would be, I believe, an ex parte participation.
But if I
You would come
have,
in with one view towards
so is
it.
there a way that a counselor can give an opinion, say on the tiny homes? Can I give written opinion as far as, this is what I would like to see as a personal
Yeah.
citizen?
I think you can as long as you're not there.
So
I,
I don't know.
it would be ex officio,
I think
What do
you
you think?
can, then you may have to excuse yourself from the vote later on.
in the vote where it was done,
Okay, that makes sense.
but you can be there
Yeah,
if you wanted, it's just like me with a business owner.
yeah, you can
And
be
I've
there for
been there,
that, and then you leave.
Years ago, I went there for one of them and
So-
Thank you.
Since we're talking about planning commission tiny homes, I don't believe the state has defined all their laws around that yet.
No, they haven't,
Yet we have a planning commission working on that.
because the state of Oregon wide has been working on it.
Yes, however, some of the laws that are being
And
changed within our charter, they're being based upon stuff that's not clearly defined yet.
that's okay. I mean, we have to get started. I think that's the opinion on it, isn't it? You gotta get going.
right now, we are trying to define what we call a, tiny home, what we call a, what was the other category? Mobile,
Yeah.
positioning of these, what property lines, what sort of,
Right.
common community areas.
What is it?
And, yeah, these sort of things we're trying to define. Waiting for the building codes of the state of Oregon to come up with interior design, you know? Have you ever been inside one of these things?
Yes.
I sincerely believe any tiny home village needs at least one mental health expert. in the lot. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but
I like that.
they are interesting, so.
well, they are better than all the tents down by the river.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's a whole different category, Tim.
That's a mini home.
Well,
Yeah,
if we are done here. One more.
I'd like to recognize somebody. Chrissy for mentioning James today, and to me, that says a lot about her character.
Thank you. And Mr. Hadley mentioned him also.
Yeah, but you know my character.
Yes, Audie.
One last question. You said that, Don brought up that you wanted a couple of people to go in and visit these law firms. Is there a criteria that you're gonna ask each person? You know, each firm?
Yeah, they've
And
already said that.
what's gonna be is, okay, so say you three here go in. Is it something that these other counselors
How are
have
you
said?
gonna report back to it?
Right, what are they gonna, is there, this is what you ask, this is what you look for?
Audie, that's a really good point. So
Right,
if
so
we
all
do
the
make
counselors are on the
appointments to
same-
go in, then those that do speak have to report to the full council on what they learned.
So I think that all the counselors should put in
We're doing some.
on that and say, this is what what you think we need to look at.
Well,
So you're all on the same page.
I think we
as to-
determined that if they're gonna go visit, we don't have to have a predetermined set of questions or that type of thing. When we do the references, we'll use a predetermined set of questions for references,
It's
because we
just,
have to by law.
it's just like the city administrator, when you do RFP, that's what this paper is, which I guess you look at it in your packet.
It's on
And I highlighted very important questions to, you know,
Go on,
see,
right, exactly. So then,
it's the same difference with, I feel Lottie's talking about for the attorneys. There is certain questions that you would like to know. We've all said, I want to go home, what do you get our agenda?
two, I'm waiting, no more hands? All right, meeting adjourned.